Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Can Intel and Qualcomm beat out Apple by the end of 2023 like they say they're going to? Or wishing anyways. I think it's just wishful thinking, to be honest. Well, let's look at some statistics here. Okay, I'm on tomsguide.com. So the M1 Max was put up against the Intel Alder Lake Core i9. Let's try and make things fair at least, right? So we have a 10 core with 8 performance, 2 efficiencies in the Mac, 32 core GPU, 64 gigs of DDR5 6400, and 4 terabytes of SSD specifically, okay? Going up against the MSI, okay, laptop, GE76 Raider with a Core i9 12900HK with 14 cores, 6 are performance, 8 are efficiency, okay? And we have 7,424 CUDA cores, oh my gosh, 32 gigs of DDR5 4800, and a 2 terabyte NVMe PCI 4.0 SSD. Now, there's one major caveat to all of this: power consumption. Macworld is running an M1 scores on a thin and I can't even pronounce it, whatever, 2021 MacBook Pro, whereas Intel's chip resides within the new Raider, a heftier gaming PC that sports an NVIDIA RTX 3080 Ti laptop GPU. According to Macworld via its sister site PC World, during Cinebench R23 testing, the MSI GE76 Raider was consistently hitting over 100 watt power draw. That's a massive step up from the Anantech found when performing the same test on the M1 MacBook Pro with an M1 Max, was only drawing 39.7 watts. So in this sense, it's as if both chips were racing neck and neck, but Apple hadn't even pushed the pedal halfway down yet. In PC World's testing, the Raider only lasted 6 hours in offline video playback, whereas the MacBook Pro managed 17 hours. In Geekbench 5 OpenCL graphics benchmarks, Intel completely destroyed the Apple in performance. And rightly so, because Apple's using metal, right, in comparison, right? The Core i9 and the NVIDIA 3080 laptop scored an astonishing 143,594 to the M1's Max at 59,774. Granted, this being a GPU comparison, a top-shelf dedicated NVIDIA GPU would surely destroy any integrated graphics Apple could squeeze into a CPU die. Intel's integrated GPU scored a measly 21,097. So Apple kind of decimated in that sense. Well, these are just benchmark scores and not necessarily indicative of real-world test use. It does show the Intel has made great strides in laptop CPU performance, but Team Blue still has a long way to go to match Apple in power efficiency. So Intel wants to try and beat out Apple's speed and use less power by 2023. I don't see this happening. Now, what I do see is something that Apple does require doing, and that's in the graphics department, obviously, as we've read. That means that Apple has to take their chip, whether it's in a laptop or whether it's in our desktops, and they have to get the graphics area away from that chip to a separate part of the board with its own dedicated video RAM, okay? Then, and only then, can I actually see Apple decimating not only this system, but anything else that Intel wants to try and come up with by 2023. Now, it will consume a little bit more wattage, but a 39 watt draw, as opposed to something that might draw maybe an extra 10 watts or 15 watts, I think is worth it in order to decimate the Intel, but at the same time, also decimate them in gaming. Okay, right now Mac systems, as we know, are not the world's greatest for gaming. And you know what? Whether it's a Mac or a PC, I could care less. Anytime integrated graphics are used, okay, on a chip die that's a CPU as well, we do see that gaming does suck. Okay, it does, and it has to suck because you're trying to use system memory to totally feed a video on the same chip. It's not going to be friendly. It's going to lag in performance big time. Now, in Apple's chips, this does work really well for video editing, for the desktop publishing, graphic arts and design stuff. It works great for doing audio with, because you know what, your interface, whether you're using Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, it makes no difference, okay? That's not graphically intensive. That's sound and processing intensive, okay? That's totally different, right? But when it comes to graphics stuff, you really need that graphics power edge, and a built-in GPU into any chip, like I said, Mac or PC, has always been a downfall of both platforms. Okay, now Apple should have realized this right from the beginning, but for some reason they thought, well, our iPads do exceedingly well, let's do that chip and just redesign it and run the Mac OS on it and do our desktops and laptops. Fantastic, great, but big drawback here. One thing engineers weren't thinking of, we're not playing super high-end video games on on tablets here, on iPads. We're playing more cheesier stuff, okay? Physically, the games are smaller in size. They do have some nice graphics that are appealing, but they are not high-end video games by any means. Now, if Apple wants to be in the gaming industry like they say they do and said they do on stage, then they need to pony up, sacrifice a few extra watts worth of power, put that GPU on the outside with its own dedicated video RAM. Then you can start stepping down on the gas pedal a little harder too, and you're going to definitely decimate everything, okay? And it would give them a break-in too for doing CGI and better 3D rendering as well. Much quicker stuff, right? That's going to really help with the M series platform with Apple Silicon, right? Because you're not going to see Apple going back to Intel. I mean, they're not going to go crawling back saying, oh, so sorry we left you. No, they're like really happy right now, and I'm really happy too, because you know the M1s have seriously got some majorly nasty horsepower. I mean, I've had the Intel Macs. I've had tons of Intel Macs. And I've had a lot of really fast Intel Macs. And I got to tell you right now, when it comes to these M1s, they smoke them. Okay? I mean, even the MacBook Air, a guy put a base model Air, same as mine, put it up against a $10,000 US, okay, Mac Tower of his, Mac Pro Tower, and pretty much, for the most part, decimated the living daylights out of that tower. Okay? So that's pretty encouraging that for $1,300, you can pretty much decimate a $10,000 computer from Apple that's an Intel-based one. That's pretty good, because that means, hey, we've got some performance. We can do things like boom, boom, boom. These SSDs in here, they run almost 3,000 megabits per second. They are freaking fast, okay? And even if you do end up in swap, which I don't recommend because it will cook your drive, okay? But if you do, at least you're not going to see that much of a performance drop. I mean, you're going to see a little bit of glitching on your video editing, but you know, that's what you get for going into swap and not having enough onboard RAM. But the first version releases of the M1s all maxed at 16 gigs of RAM and 2 terabytes of drive space. Now, honestly, consumers, you should still have that 16 gigs. I mean, at least you're not going to go into swap unless you're crazy enough to run way too many programs at once, which I get a lot of people want to do, but it's really not practical, because even if you still have the available RAM with 16 gigs running a bunch of programs, your processor is getting the living daylights choked out of it because it's going, I can't do this, you know, and you're slugging yourself down. You're causing your own grief there, okay? Try and run one program at a time, okay? It's a lot better for you, better for your computer, and you're going to have your top performing edge, okay? Like when I do any kind of audio recording, ain't nothing else running at the same time. When I'm surfing the internet, I will be exporting a video at the same time. Okay? So exporting, I don't care. It really doesn't interfere too much with my surfing. And for me, honestly, I'm not in an industry where I'm dealing with customers in a graphics area or in a movie area where I'm being paid big money to produce something for them. So I don't have to worry about the time constraints. So if it takes me 10 minutes to export a video, I really don't care. If it takes me a half an hour to export a video, I don't care. I got all the time in the world, so I'll go and I'll surf while I'm exporting a video, and I still got lots of RAM left over because I have 16 gigs. On 8 gigs, not happening very well without going into swap probably. Okay, or I'll barely just be on the edge of going into swap with 8 gigs of RAM, which I really don't want to be on that edge either. But either way, I am stealing a lot of performance away from my computer, running my browser and my video program doing exporting at the same time. Okay, even though it's not all that noticeable on an M1 chip, it would be very noticeable on an Intel processor Mac. So that's one thing to consider too. There is a lot of edges to be had, a lot of benefits to be had running an M1 system. And the simple fact is Apple's not making Intel systems anymore other than the Mac Mini, and I believe they're still doing the Mac Pro for now, at least until they release a new Mac Pro. But they did prematurely get rid of the iMac Pro because we do not have a Pro version of the iMac yet in an M1. We only have a first release. The M2, we are not getting a new iMac. M3s was when we will likely see a new iMac, and the leaks are starting to come out, and it looks like we might be seeing an iMac Pro or a new iMac at least in the M3. We're not totally sure yet. We only have minimal leaks right now. But we are promising that we are definitely going to have much more powerful machines regardless in the M3s. Because the M2s aren't going to be very much more powerful, if at all, other than in the graphics side we will see a couple extra cores. But Apple's not redesigning an iMac just for 2 more cores. Okay, it's just not going to happen. It's not financially worth it either. Okay, so we do have some time to still wait for even faster, better Macs, right? But we do have some pretty interesting stuff out right now with the studios, with these M1 Pro and Pro Max MacBooks. They're really neat machines. They're really good. They're really fast. Now, I've seen a lot of extensive testing too, running some really super heavy-duty, high-resolution video editing with rendering and exporting and everything. And you know what? The Mac Mini and the Studio both barely broke a sweat. Their fans were still basically at idle. They really didn't turn up any, even though they heated up maybe a couple of degrees at best. Where the MacBook was pushing over 90 degrees, doing the exact same video, same rendering, same exporting, all that jazz. And the MacBook was really heating up, okay? I mean, but you know what? Laptops aren't made to do that sort of thing. You know, that's another thing that people don't realize. They think, well, I'll get a laptop because it's more convenient, it's very portable, I can do whatever I want. Yes, but in a professional situation, no, it is not practical to run a laptop to try and run your business off of it. It just doesn't go well. And the laptop, you'll definitely burn it up quicker, right? Whereas a desktop, they run nice and cool and they get the job done, and you know, you're not straining them or throttling the hell out of them, you know. So I mean, there are advantages to desktops, obviously. So anyway, that's kind of up to you what you do. I mean, for YouTubers, laptops, desktops makes no difference. It's when you get into the professional high-end video stuff, the professional type of desktop publishing, graphic arts and design, professional music production. Don't use a MacBook for trying to run a professional music recording studio. At-home studios, great. Do it. It's going to work perfect for you. Heck, you can do it on a base model MacBook Air if you're very careful, okay? Because you don't want to go into that swap space, okay? But if you have an Air, though, with 16 gigs of RAM and half a terabyte, then sure, you can do home recording studio. I've been playing with my Air recently. I have a dongle, which is like a powered hub. I can run it powered or unpowered. Better to run it powered. So I just use the Mac power supply that came with my MacBook Air. It powers the hub, powers all the ports up, so I can load them up pretty good and do all I need to do, even going out to a bigger display at the same time. I have no issues, and I still have one free Thunderbolt port out of the deal while I'm at it. Okay, so it's advantageous that way. To me, it works. And it works as a great emergency system. But as long as I only run just the one program that I need to run, I'm doing really good. for video editing on the air as a base model, as long as you're doing basically quick and dirty, or maybe a little bit of involved editing, but not too heavy duty. The Air will more than handle it as far as the RAM usage goes. Okay, it's definitely going to handle the processing power. That's not up for debate. It'll definitely handle it, okay? But as far as what Intel and Qualcomm are trying to say that they're going to try and pull off by 2023, I doubt they can pull it off. I mean, come on. They're using, in their desktop systems, several hundred watts of power with that 3080 card and that Alder Lake chip. They are using several hundred watts of power. And it's like you're going to have your own nuclear power plant in the backyard to run the thing, right? And you're going to melt down the polar ice caps for cooling because that chip runs so severely hot. And even this Alder Lake chip, the mobile chip, still runs really hot and draws well over 100 watts. That's a lot of power to draw with. I mean, it's like getting up there, right? And for a laptop, and the battery runtime is terrible, right? We've seen that too in the write-up. So for Intel to be able to surpass at less power than a Mac, or equal power to a Mac at least, and surpass, I don't see it happening. And like I said, Apple was at 38 watts and more or less not even halfway to the floor on the throttle, right? I mean, Apple still had plenty of room to push the button down further, and they have done so since. We are chewing more wattage in the studios, right? And we have a lot more performance, right? But we're still never going to have to, worry about getting too high of wattage per performance. But by separating that video card, I think that's the smartest thing Apple could do, and having its own dedicated video RAM and a good amount of it, like started out with about 16 gigs just to be, generous and realistic. And you're going to see that these will become gaming monsters at that point, right? But as long as they keep it in that chip, they're always going to have a struggling point, right? And that's what they need to try and avoid. Great that you want to make things smaller and more compact, but hey, if there's things that you want to surpass in, there's things that you want to even be able to do more so for your customers that are begging for gaming, then you're going to have to pony up and do the right thing here. Get rid of the onboard video and throw it on its own bus line with its own video RAM. Then things will smarten up and really start smoking. I mean, you can keep the SSD there, you can keep the RAM there, and you keep the processor in the same die. I wouldn't care about that. But anything to do with the graphics stuff, that's all got to be shifted out. It's all got to be separated, okay? And a couple of inches on the board is nothing, okay? So it's not going to hurt anything. And besides, look at the available airspace we have even in the mini box. I mean, that's a lot of airspace doing nothing, right? You can even get even bigger drives, no problem, right? Put them on your chip, no problem. I mean, come on, they got 8 terabyte, that they got capable now. Mind you, they moved it they left it partially on the chip and partially not on the chip with the studios. They're actually storage chips is what they are. The main controller is on the die. So, they kind of had to separate that there, but, at least it was kind of a good move, and those drives are actually running quite fast too. They're clocking over 5,000 megabits per second. They're getting pretty quick. They're just not real NVMEs or real SSD drives. They're storage chips is what they are. The controllers are on the die. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of where I think we're at with this one. I can't wait to see what Intel actually does pull off. I would be shocked if they could actually beat out Apple at less wattage. And that'll be interesting because I really don't think that they have the ability to do it. Or they would have actually done it already, because I mean M2s are coming out now this year, M3s are coming out in 2023, we've got M3 leaks already, a little bit. I can't wait to see more of what we're going to have for leaks coming out on M3, see how they're going to be. I'm hoping the pricing is going to be affordable enough because with what I'm seeing on the M2s, I'm not going to upgrade. If I upgraded now, I would have to go to a base studio for 2,500 Canadian. That's where I would go, and then I wouldn't touch another Mac for probably 6-7 years, you know, which in 6 or 7 years, we're going to be like M7s or M8s or something, right? We're going to have something massively fanatical at that point, in which case then I'd upgrade again. But I'd still wait a year and see, you know, what happens with them first. You know, because any new tech, I like to wait a year, no matter who comes out with it, just to see how stable things are and what kind of problems happen. But anyways, that's just me. Thank you guys so much for watching and being patient. Hope you got a lot out of the video, learned a lot too. Comments, you know, below, right? You know, leave your opinions and thoughts on my ideas here too. Do you think it's a good idea? And do you think it would work out if Apple separated their video from the side? Even though it would chew up a little more wattage, do you think that that would be the game changer for us? Because I really do believe it will, because history speaks for itself. Integrated graphics never works out great for gameplay. But anyways, see ya.